Good morning. On behalf of myself, Councillor Ray Wootton, Chairman, and Vice Chairman, Councillor Breda Ray Griffin, welcome to the Constitution Committee. This meeting is being covered by the rules of the Constitution, which includes the new Code of Conduct, and will be recorded. The recording is retained in accordance with the Council's document retention policy. I'd like to welcome all officers and Cabinet members to this meeting. If you wish to ask a question, please indicate to the Vice Chairman. We'll now move on to the agenda. Agenda item 1, apologies for absence. Lucy.
Thank you, Chairman. Apologies for absence have been received from Councillor Fellows.
Thank you. Item 2, disclosures of interest. Do any members have any disclosures of interest that are pecuniary? That's done. Thank you very much indeed. Item 3, minutes of the meeting held on the 10th of January 2022. This is for accuracy only. I should go through them page by page. Page 3, page 4. Yes, Councillor Baxter.
Thank you, Chair. If you like. Thank you, Chairman. I would like to start by saying thank you to the outgoing Chair who did a great job while he was here. But on this particular question, I've got 2 on page 4. One is on item 29. It says there was not an expectation or requirement for members to sign up to the new Code of Conduct. By signing the acceptance of office, I guess in 2019, when they were elected, that covered members in relation to the new model code.
That's correct.
I just want to make sure I've understood it properly, that the model code that we accepted at maybe last meeting, I signed up to 2 years before it was invented. Is that what you're saying?
These are not my minutes, but that is the true reflection. You signed up as a member when you first joined, but you are included in the updated Code of Conduct.
I don't see how that can be, because if we invented a model Code of Conduct that said we all had to wear yellow ties to the meetings, then I haven't signed up for that.
That's a good argument point there, but I'm going to call in Alan Robinson to explain further. Thank you, Alan.
Thank you, Chairman. I think actually, Chairman, you've put it just as I would see it. As someone who's accepted office for South Kesteven District Council, you've accepted the Code of Conduct that is in place at South Kesteven District Council at whatever point. So, in my view, the fact as a councillor, just as an officer, if the Code of Conduct changes for officers, you're bound by the rules of that. I don't think I can completely understand your point, Councillor Baxter, but I think that's the position that we're in. Now, the alternative to that, of course, is that everybody re-signs it, and that those who choose not to somehow aren't governed by the Code of Conduct, which clearly is also an untenable position. So, my advice would be that as accepting office as a councillor, you accept to follow the rules just as you do everything in the Constitution, whether you were in agreement with it or not. So that would be my view. I understand you may disagree with me, but that would be my view.
And your second point, Councillor Baxter.
Thank you for that. Yes, I do disagree with you, but it's on a point, and obviously if we all stick to the Code of Conduct, that's a better way of going on. The second point, it was said in paragraph 30 that the Head of Democratic Services and Deputy Monitoring Officer would confirm numbers to members outside of the meeting. That may or may not have happened. I'd be grateful if someone can point to the email or other message that was sent to confirm the numbers, but also why don't we confirm the numbers here for the record?
I'm going to bring in Graham Watts to ask this question. Graham?
I'm just trying to find reference, Councillor, to the number here. Is it the number of authorities that have also signed up to the model code? Was that the query?
It says a member, which is probably me, asked for confirmation of a number of Lincolnshire authorities that have adopted the new model code. And then at the bottom of the paragraph, it says that you or the head of, they're both you, either you or you, would confirm numbers to members outside the meeting.
Graham?
It's included on page 11 of the agenda pack, Chairman.
Thank you. I do beg your pardon.
I should now continue. Where was I? Page 3, page 4, sorry, page 4, page 5, page 6, page 7, page 8, and page 9. Do you agree, members, that that's a true record, apart from the items mentioned by Councillor Baxter on the meeting held on the 10th of January 2022? I propose that it is correct. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Sandal. All those in favour, please raise their hands. Thank you, that's carried. Thank you. Item 4, updates from the previous meeting on page 4. Again, that's what Graham has just alluded to, the local authorities that have signed up to the new code of conduct. Is there any questions regarding item 4? If not, we'll move on. No, thank you. Now, item 5, regarding the planning service review, amendments to the council's constitution related to the planning decision making. I've had representations this morning that this report contained some inaccuracies. So what I've decided to do is to defer this report for a future meeting, which I hope we're going to hold in April, and clarification will bring this item back to this committee then. Thank you. Thank you. We'll move on now to...
Sorry, Chair. This has been hanging around for 18 months. We've spent something like £40,000 of public money on the review and the subsequent meetings. We've all been to umpteen different meetings. Who is responsible for it not being in a fit state to be discussed at this meeting, just as it wasn't in a fit state to be discussed at the last meeting?
First of all, could I ask that you please call me chair? I will not respond if you call me chair in the future. Secondly, constitution meetings are only held 2 or 3 months apart, so there is a time lapse between them. I will call on now Alan Robinson, perhaps to give an explanation if you can. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. So, in terms of where this comes from, I think there's been some discrepancies about what's in the report and what was agreed at the workshop. Rather than have that debate here, we have the opportunity still to make our deadline for actually reviewing the Constitution in May. If we are planning to have further meetings of this committee, because there are still things that we need to be agreed before May, it seems sensible, and it's the chair's view that we could hold that off until the next meeting. Not that anybody's got anything wrong, just to get that clarity so members know what it is they're discussing and make sure it is fully aligned with the workshops that took place earlier. We really want to maintain that transparency and the kind of agreement that this has had all the way through its process. It doesn't affect the overall timeline, and therefore I think the risks are greater of having the debate here when there is still some concern and a need for further understanding, than to have a further meeting in April, which we plan to do anyway and include this on it, to take so and still make the May annual council review day, Councillor Baxter, so, and through you, Chair, sorry, and I think that's a sensible approach, but of course it isn't a decision for me to make. It's for the chairman and the committee.
Thank you very much, Alan. As chairman, Councillor Baxter, well, I would hope that if you get the minutes of a meeting and you do see either an inaccuracy or you want some clarification, that you perhaps contact me before the Constitution Committee meeting, or our officer, Graham Watts, for an explanation, instead of waiting for the meeting to start. I'm now going to move on to.
Well, I haven't finished, Chairman.
You didn't explain that. What was your question?
Right. My question is, right. First of all, Chairman, you've just told me that this was pulled this morning. So how could I have got in touch with you about your last minute changes to the agenda ahead of the meeting.
I'm talking in general, If you have a clarification or you have something that you wish to raise with me, please do so before the meeting. Yes, this was raised for me this morning at 7:30, so there was no way that I could circulate this this question or query to members before the meeting started. Thank you.
I think it's a
Well,
disrespect.
I'm not
I
gonna-
think it's a disrespect.
Councillor Baxter, I'm
I
not
think-
going to get into an argument with you today. I've explained the procedure. If you have a query, which obviously you couldn't have had this morning, if you have a query before, please let me know, or the monitoring officer, before the meeting starts.
That's a given, Chairman. But on this occasion and on the previous occasion, the agenda has been changed at the last minute. I've got no problem with waiting until we're ready to discuss an item before we discuss it. But as it turns out, we're not. Furthermore, these workshop meetings that we've had and I've attended, and I'm grateful that they've been held in public and online, but where can a member of the public find the record of those member meetings? Are there minutes or action notes or anything like that? Why aren't these included in the agenda?
Oh, you raised a very, very valid point there, Councillor Baxter, about minutes and records of the working group. And I can't answer that, but I shall ask Graham Watts if he knows. Thank you, Graham.
Thanks, Chairman. We made a conscious decision to record the meetings, I think, and broadcast them as we normally do, but because they're informal, there were no formal minutes taken of those meetings. Any actions would be fed back in and reflected in the report that comes back to this committee, which is what's happened on this occasion. But obviously, there's, as Mr. Robinson's already highlighted, a discrepancy in relation to what's included in the report and what may have been discussed at the working group, so or the informal meeting. Sorry. So yeah, in terms of the notes from that meeting, as far as I'm aware, we don't have any official notes from that informal meeting.
Thank you very much indeed. I'm going to go back to item 5. Councillor Dilks, you're not a member of this committee, so therefore I need to ask fellow members whether you can speak according to the Constitution. I will allow you to speak, but my members, do they agree? Yes. Thank you. Go ahead.
You're very kind. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've got to say I'm disappointed. It's not going to be discussed today. That's why I've come as a non-member, but as a member of the planning committee, I've had interest in this right the way through. But I'm just interested that we've had these 2 meetings that were apparently public meetings. There is no minutes has been published for them. The first of which was 4 or 5 months ago. The second one was in November, where the planning committee apparently discussed these changes. There's been no minutes published. Why is that? And yet we're told now that the meeting was recorded. Were those meetings actually published on YouTube? Were they? I couldn't actually find them last night, but I would ask to be directed to where they are on YouTube. That would be helpful. But as colleagues have said, it's been going on nearly 2 years. For goodness sake. And lastly, Mr. Chairman, I did come to the last meeting of the Constitution where this item was due to be heard. It wasn't actually on the agenda, but it was due to come to that meeting. And it wasn't. So I've had 2 wasted journeys. Thanks anyway.
Well, I'm sorry, Councillor Dilks, you've had a wasted journey, but I'm sure you would agree with me that it's better to defer something for clarity reasons than pass something which may be rejected at council in May. Thank you. I do apologise to members. I need to go back to agenda item 5 as we need to vote whether we all agree to defer this to a future meeting, which is hopefully in April, before the council meeting. I propose that we do. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Susan Sandal. All those in favour, please raise their hand. All those against? Any? Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Baxter. Now move on to item 6. Hopefully we can proceed at a faster pace than we have done so far today. Item 6 you'll find on page 33, which is the Constitution Review, Part 1 and Part 2. I'm going to now hand over to Graham Watts for explanation. Graham?
Thank you, Chairman. So before councillors today, we have a revised Part 1 and Part 2 of the new constitution. So the new constitution is going to feature 7 parts. We've already, as a council, approved Part 3, which was the scheme of delegation, responsibility for functions. So this is the parts 1 and 2, which actually are quite administrative in their nature, really, compared to the substantial section Part 3 that we've already discussed. Chairman, if it's okay with you, I'll go through Part 1 first, and then proceed to Part 2, if that's okay.
Yes, thank you very much, Steve Graham. Just to remind members that this paper has been through political leaders, senior management team as well. Graham, over to you.
Thank you, Chairman. So Part 1 is a summary and explanation of the Constitution and what the Constitution is there for. So using the same mapping system that we've used in the previous review of Part 3, the documents before you set out, hopefully relatively clearly, those aspects that have been amended, that have been removed, that have been added, or amended, and explain the reason why as well. I think the key aspect of Part 1 that's changed is a recommendation to remove reference to the political balance of the authority. In the model constitution, that's not something that would feature in the constitution, and certainly looking at constitutions from across Lincolnshire, political balance doesn't tend to feature in the constitution. So to be consistent in that respect, that's one of the areas that I've recommended be removed from the new version of the constitution. But page 45 sets out the very colourful table, which can be read alongside the working version of the constitution. So you can see clearly those parts that have effectively been lifted into the new Part 1 document, and those sections that have been removed. I've got nothing else to add in relation to Part 1, Chairman. If any members have any questions, then I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you very much, Steve Graham. I'm now going to open up to members of the committee for questions on Part 1 only. Any questions? No, thank you very much, Steve. Oh, sorry, I didn't see your hand up there, Councillor Baxter.
I beg your pardon. I was giving way to the other members in case they had questions. Well, I've got loads actually. Some of them are typographical and kind of, you might want to say nitpicky. However, I'm not sure of the flight path of this. In the recommendations to the committee, I don't know if we're looking at those at the moment. In the recommendations, it says that we are agreeing an informal workshop, and that subject to there being no significant comments, well, I think there will be significant comments, but subject to there being none, that we recommend to full council for approval. So the first question is about the flight path. And secondly, I'd like to ask why there is no, I thought it was custom and practice in this council to have a paragraph in reports to committees about consultation. There doesn't appear to be one in this report. And then my third set of questions are about the Part 1 itself. First of all, the blue and the yellow. Could you just interrupt my question to say what's blue and what's yellow?
Graham?
So blue represents something that's been taken from the current constitution but has been amended. Yellow is something that doesn't feature in our current constitution, has been added.
Microphone, please.
Thank you, through you, Chairman, for that clarification. On paragraph 41, the third paragraph under how the council operates, I think is incorrect. It says here that the council appoints a leader who appoints councillors to sit on committees and outside bodies. That may be custom and practice, but that's not what our current constitution says. So can you clarify, is this changing the way in which people are appointed to committees?
Graham?
So this particular wording is lifted from our current constitution. So you're absolutely right. The leader appoints councillors to sit on cabinet, but it's the council that formally approves membership on committees. So that, yeah, that does need to be amended. So thank you for highlighting that.
Thank you. Your next question.
Well, I don't, I'll have a look after the meeting to see where it's lifted from, because I don't recognise that within the, but it's not worth having the argument about it now. Then there are other bits and pieces, but there are some places where the cross-reference has been taken away, and actually the cross-reference is quite useful. And I also question whether taking away the reference to political balance completely is helpful, because I think we all should remember that political balance is sometimes it's very useful, sometimes it's a stick to beat people with, but if it's in there, it should, if it's I believe it's a legal requirement that we have political balance, and I don't see any problem with reminding ourselves via the Constitution of our legal requirements.
Thank you, Councillor Baxter. Graham, are you able to answer that question?
Yeah, so I mean, the removal of political balance is open to members. If the council wishes to retain that in the constitution, then of course that's something the council can do. It does obviously change throughout the year, so it's something that we'd need to review. But as part of this process and as part of this committee's role, we're keen to review the constitution at any throughout the year anyway. Other councils don't tend to have political balance in their constitution, so that's the reason why I've not included it. Just in relation to the reference to how the council operates on page 41, page 5 of the constitution sets out where that part has come from. So again, happy to take those comments on board and make the amendment as necessary.
Thank you. I'm now going to bring in Alan Robinson for a further explanation.
It was just really about the political balance. I think at the moment, the political balance as it is set in the constitution. It changes all the time. Every time we have an election, every time we have a change in the makeup of our group. So it's not really constitutional matter. It's what we need in the constitution. I think this is something that Graham and I can look at, is how the political balance works, how it's calculated, rather than, which is it's legally binding. It isn't something that we have choice over, but I think that's more useful in a constitution than what it is today, because the minute it's published, it will be wrong. And I think that's why most councils opt not to include their political balance in it, because it's immediately wrong the moment it's published, isn't it? Because something will have changed. Usually, that's what my experience. So that's the reason. I think it'd be far better to have an explanation as to how it's calculated than to say what it currently is.
Good, thank you. I'm now going to bring in Councillor Susan Sandel. I'll come back to you, Councillor Baxter, in a minute. Councillor Baxter Sandel.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was just going to say exactly what the gentleman just said, that I don't think we should put numbers and ordering of the election, because it does vary, and then very often not, it's wrong. So it should be more of a generalisation of what the breakdown of the political balance and the committees are, rather than individual numbers. Like we discussed before, when it said who particular officers were for something, and they changed because the fact that, there'd been elections and people moved on, or whatever the circumstances were. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Steve, for that explanation. Now back to Councillor Baxter.
Thank you, through you, Chairman, to Mr. Robinson for explaining that. I understand, and I completely agree that the actual numbers shouldn't be in the Constitution, but the definition of what the political balance is for and what it means and how it works is something that we should have. The Constitution should make sense. The same Constitution should make sense before an election and after the election, even if you have a landslide one way or the other, mostly one way, but could be the other. It should make sense in itself without any changes. However, if that's the goal, then at the bottom of page 41, we have a list of the overview scrutiny committees. Well, the overview and scrutiny committees have been changed at the whim of the leader in the past. We didn't used to have any overview scrutiny committees, and then we had 5, and now we've got 4. And so if they can change without a formal constitutional process, then they shouldn't be in here, because if the lead, and as I understand it, the leader has the power to do so. If the leader wanted to invent an overview scrutiny committee for buttons or paper clips, he could do so, and that doesn't currently require a change to the constitution, but it would require a change to the wording of the constitution. So is there an answer to that question?
I mean, before I'm going to bring Alan Robinson for this, but before I do, I mean, I've been on the council now for 15 years. I don't think you've been on as long as I have, but there were policy development groups and then the scrutiny groups. They've been changed, so they could change again. But I'm going to have to bring in Alan Robinson. Alan?
No, and again, I think I'm finding myself that I'd have to agree with Councillor Baxter on this one, in that actually that it should form part of the constitution, you know, the terms of reference for our scrutiny committees. So which the type and number is ought to be something that I would suggest should be agreed as part of the constitution. So if the change is to be made, it's a constitutional change. That, you know, we can add working groups, as the chairman says, and add other things, informal things. But in terms of the formal scrutiny of the council and changing committees, I would concur that should be dealt with through this committee, and then recommendations onto full council to approve terms of reference for any new scrutiny committees, or to change any of them, because clearly we've got every chance of not sitting in a committee and not knowing what it's for otherwise. So you've got to be really clear. We all need to agree, because anybody could be on a committee either as a substitute or whatever. So I think we need to be clear about what the terms of reference are. Looking at Graham, hoping he agrees with me. But that's something that we can certainly work on. I don't think there's any intention for it to be, well, let's have a different scrutiny committee. I think that the council, I would suggest the council would want to actually vote on that in the end, but we've got this way of working that comes through this committee first, which I think has been really helpful in my time here. So I would like to continue with that as well.
Thank you, Alan. Do you have any further questions?
Yes, just to clarify on that point, Chairman, I haven't been here as long as you, but I have been here longer than Mr. Robinson. Might not feel like it. But the makeup of the overview scrutiny committees, as I understand, since 2017 at least, has been entirely within the gift or the wisdom of the leader of the council. I don't think that should be the case, but it has been the case. Yes, it has. When Matthew Lee was elected leader in 2017, at the very first meeting, he said, we're going to scrap all these policy development groups and replace them with five overview scrutiny committees. There was no constitutional process to that.
Councillor Evans, I'm going to bring in Councillor Kellam Cook, leader of the council, for an explanation. Councillor Cook.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My memory serves me correctly. Yes, there was changes to the operations of the committees back in 2017, and that resulted in a report going to council and the council voting on that report. And then following the council adopting the new committees, nominations were then taken for those new committees. But as leader of the council, yes, I can bring forward a report to the full council meeting, and it would usually be at the annual meeting, should I wish to make any changes, but it's up to council to then vote on those as they did in 2017.
Thank you. Any further comments, Councillor Baxter?
Well, we'll check the record, because I'm sure that those proposals were presented, possibly even verbally, at the meeting and voted on at the meeting. That's not following a constitutional process. Now, you can argue, if you like, that that aspect of the way the council operates shouldn't be embedded within the constitution. It should be at the whim of the leader, and we could argue that both ways. But currently, these committees are referenced within the constitution, and I'm not sure that that's not how things work. The constitution should match how things work, and currently it doesn't, and that's kind of my point.
In fact, I quite agree with you, Councillor Baxter. If the law says this, it does, and states this, you do this, and that's it. So our constitution reflects our council law and should be in there to reflect the right way to do things. Any further comments at all? I'll allow you to come back, Councillor Dilks.
You're very kind. I notice the leader's not a member of this committee either, but you didn't take a vote on whether you should allow him to speak. But, you know, I'm just opposition. So I just want to seek, I know it's funny, isn't it?
No, it's not funny, Councillor Dilks. Your view is important, which is why I allowed you to speak in the first place.
Oh, sorry, there we are. I just wanted to seek clarification. Are you saying, Mr. Robinson, I think you are, and it seems sensible to me, as I understand it at the moment, the committees that we have, the scrutiny committees that we have, are listed in the Constitution and the remits of them are within the Constitution. We're not going to change that, are we? We're going to keep all that in. That's about what you're saying, isn't it, I think? Sorry?
If you could turn your mic on, Alan, respond. Thank you.
Sorry, I was just waiting for you, Chairman. So, yeah, I mean, it's in the Constitution to be changed. The process is, it comes here and then it goes to full council. That's where constitutional changes, they can only be changed by full council. So you're right, neither Graham or I have been here as long as the members, but, you know, reading the Constitution, which is obviously something we're tasked with doing, it's my understanding that the details of what committees we have are in there, as are the terms of reference. And therefore, if they want to change, if they need to be changed, they're changed through that proper process, through due process, which is first here, doesn't have to come here. That's probably, but our practice is that it does, but only the council can change the Constitution. And that's full council, not one member of it.
If I may just briefly reply. Yes, thank you for that. It is a fact. It may be practice, but when the PDG, the policy development groups, were done away with, it didn't come to the Constitution Committee prior to that. It was just done on the day the new leader took over. I think that's fair, isn't it, Callum?
I'm going to bring Alan in. Alan's come first.
So just for clarity, I mean, again, the policy development boards, I don't know, I wasn't here, but one would imagine those are more informal and therefore unlikely to be included in the Constitution and therefore don't need to go through that process. So I would have to look at and I haven't done this, Councillor Dilks, I'd have to look at 2016's Constitution and work out what that was. But actually, I think the point is very well made that if these changes need to be made now, they need to go to council.
Members, what is clear to me, and from today onwards, any report that needs a working group will have a working group so that it's all open and transparent to everybody to have the opportunity to speak and put their points forward. Then when hopefully in future we'll avoid nearly half an hour of going through this report. Councillor Baxter, is there any further comments that you wish to make?
Not on Appendix 1.
Thank you. I can move on to Appendix 2 then. Graham, Appendix 2. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. So yes, part 2 is articles of the Constitution. So in our current Constitution, the articles that we have actually amalgamate so an article is supposed to be just a brief summary of a particular function of the authority. So what is full council, what is cabinet, what are regulatory committees? At the moment, our Constitution kind of amalgamates the rules of procedure alongside the articles. So it's quite difficult to navigate your way through. This part of the Constitution, the articles, is basically separating that out from our current Constitution, because Part 4 of our Constitution will set out all of the rules of procedure in relation to council procedure rules for cabinet, procedure rules for overview and scrutiny committees. That's where the terms of reference for those committees will be made clear. Protocols in relation to how governance and audit undertakes its functions are actually in the article, because there's no specific rules of procedure for that particular committee. So the articles are supposed to be quite brief and just an introduction, an overview as to what each of those functions are. So this new part of the Constitution, Part 2, just seeks to set that out. And again, the same principles are applied in relation to the mapping documentation. Some key changes that have been made, if I can find them, bear with me, that are recommended. And again, that's entirely up to council to consider. But one of the key things that's been removed from the articles is things like the chairman, the process for postponing meetings. And also there's reference to specific committees in relation to recorded votes. They're all things that should be clear in rules of procedure as opposed to the articles. So although they show as being deleted from this particular part of the Constitution, they will be reflected in the rules of procedure section. And again, it's to remove that duplication and that inconsistency, so that as part of our rules of procedure, when they are agreed, everything will be clear in that part of the Constitution, so that there's no question as to, you know, what rules there are in relation to each committee or body. One of the other things that recommended for deletion from the articles in relation to Governance and Audit Committee, in our current Constitution, there's a very prescribed list of mandatory training requirements. Now, for Planning Committee and Licensing Committee, they also have mandatory training requirements, but there's no kind of specification in the Constitution in relation to what they are. For Governance and Audit Committee, it's very prescriptive, and actually, I don't think that's very helpful, because there might be things that come up that the Governance and Audit Committee do need to be trained on, that isn't necessarily included in the list in the Constitution. And if we could, you know, if Planning Committee can be relatively open, and the officers and the chairman can be trusted to concoct a training programme that fits the requirements of that mandatory training, then I think the same principle should apply to the Governance and Audit Committee. So that's the explanation as to why that's been removed as well, Chairman. But again, happy to take any questions. Just in relation to the journey, I think Councillor Baxter mentioned about the flight path. The purpose of this committee was really to seek the committee's views as to the two documents. As with the other part of the Constitution that was reviewed, we're looking to engage with all members of the council. So there will be an opportunity for all members to have an input. But I think the first stage for me was to get the views of the committee today, to, you know, seek approval in principle, raise any issues that you may have as a committee before engaging with members. And then at that stage, if there aren't any significant changes that members make as part of that workshop, then in principle, the committee may be minded to make the recommendation to council. But if anything comes up as part of those workshops, of course, we'll bring that back and debate that at this committee before making a recommendation to council.
Thank you. Members, may I say a big thank you to Graham, because it's really extremely hard work to go through the whole Constitution. I hark back to when I first joined in 2007. Within 2 years, we had an outside agency at great expense doing this Constitution review. We've had another review since. So it is very complicated and very hard to go through this report. So I thank Graham for that work. I'm now going to open it up to members of the committee. Any questions on part 2? Councillor Baxter.
Thank you. I've got loads, Chairman. Some of them are nitpicky or grammatical or whatever. So we're given you permission, I'd like to speak to Mr. Watts between now and any workshops about them, and not waste anybody's time here with them.
Thank you, that's good. Thank you.
I don't know if that would include, so things of a kind of on page 50, 1.1, is it better to say in accordance with the law or with UK law? I don't know. Maybe previously it was to include UK and European law or the Geneva Convention. I don't know. But the law could arguably, you could have a conversation about it. Anyway, further on, there is quite a few words which look to me to be redundant. For example, on all pages, but for example, if you look at page 58, number 3, paragraph B, Roman numeral 3, it says to ensure the full council meeting is a forum for debate of matters of concerns to the local community in accordance with council procedure rules. Well, surely everything we do has to be in. You could put that caveat at the end of absolutely every paragraph in the Constitution, that we have to do it in accordance with council procedure rules. That's what the Constitution is for. So for me, that's a unnecessary addition. Also on that paragraph, paragraph, Roman numeral number 6, you've repeated what you said on the previous page It's quite a good division of 5.2A being the ceremonial role and the 5.2B chairing meetings of full council, but that's been left in that final bullet point, which is all about ceremonial. So that can go, and it's that kind of thing. It's worth saying at this point that some people think the ceremonial role and the chairing meetings role might be something which could usefully be divided, because otherwise people make assumptions about how people get appointed to the role, and I don't think it's fair. Anyway, Article 6, which is Overview and Scrutiny Committee, is on page 59. Oh, sorry, just to go back one. On page 354, 3.2, it says members of the public on the electoral register for the area of South Kesteven have the right to vote at local and national electoral events. I don't think that's true. I think there are some people who can vote at national elections, can vote at local elections and not at national elections. I'm not sure how the changes to the European Union changed that, but certainly there were times that I was going around canvassing where people were able to vote in the national but not in the local. So that needs correcting. Going up to Article 6 on page 59, I don't know where even to start on this because it has changed beyond all recognition. It shows there's loads of significant changes within this article, which I would want to talk about in detail. And I don't think we would have time this morning to have what would be sometimes a practical and sometimes a philosophical debate about the content. I just want to say that it has been changed massively. And then the other problem with this whole
before you go any further, just an indication from Alan Robinson who wishes to speak. So perhaps it may help your questions. Alan Robinson.
Thank you, Chairman. So I think to help, and it might be helpful to do this. I know as we did the consultation meetings last time, by some strange quirk of timing, you did get to meet with the chairman and the head of service on this as an individual, and that was really useful. I know both the chairman and Graham were really positive about that. Would that be something that you would be interested in doing based on these further bits, Councillor Baxter? Because I think it would be useful for us all to spend kind of the time it needs to go for that detail. We're not at the point of agreeing these yet, so there is still time to do that. If you were happy to spend some time with us to go through these things, and then we can make the changes to something we can all agree to at full council, which would be obviously really beneficial.
Councillor Baxter.
Thank you, Mr. Robinson. I think that all meetings would work better if they were done like that. Just me and the officers, but I get that. But there are some things that are a bit. So the bits about the UK law and such like, happy to do that. But the bigger bits, like what I've said about Appendix Article 6, and also, if I might continue, Chair. Article 10 has disappeared completely. They used to, Article 11 is now Article 10, and Article 10 has just evaporated completely. There's also quite a lot of reference to, this will be covered in Article, if
I could just stop you again, I do apologise for stopping you in track, but I think that Graham wants me to able to answer your questions. And as I said earlier on, I hope that in future, we do have working groups so that there's full transparency, full clarity, and hopefully in future meetings will progress at a faster pace. Graham.
Thank you, Chairman. Just in relation to Article 6, I just wanted to make the point that it will have changed a lot, and this is a perfect example of where procedure rules have been amalgamated with the article. So there'll be a procedure rule for overview and scrutiny, which will set out a lot of the information in our current constitution that featured underneath that article, whereas the article should just be a brief overview as to what overview and scrutiny is and what the function is. the detail in relation to how that works and the terms of reference of the committees will all feature in the actual procedure rule, which will be in part 4. So it's not been lost, it's just going to be elsewhere in the document.
That makes sense. Councillor Baxter.
It makes sense. At the moment, I couldn't find it. Perhaps in our meeting, we can see where it is. I notice on page 59, under the new Article 6, that we do mention the aforementioned political balance. It says overview scrutiny committees will be comply with the political balance, but I don't know if it says that about all the other committees. So as I understand it, Constitution Committee needs to obey the political balance, and so does licensing, and so does everything else. I don't know where they're all gone.
Councillor Baxter, I'm going to bring Alan Robinson, who'll be able to explain and answer your questions. Thank you. Alan, over to you.
So trying not to sound like Jackie Weaver at this point, all committees need to abide by political balance. That is the general rules on this. But however, a council can agree to not to follow their standing orders at full council. So if we went to annual council to appoint to a committee, the council could agree not to apply political balance, but that would need 100% support from the, that would need everybody from the council to agree that. So I don't, but that's the way that would work. All committees need to be politically balanced, even those ones, say like planning or licensing, where they are apolitical. So you leave your politics at the door. Political balance is still a necessary part of the way local democracy works, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on which side of that equation you're on.
Thank you. I'm now bringing in Graham to further explanation. Graham.
Thank you, Chairman. So political balance references the Section 15 of the Local Government and Housing Act 1989. That reflects what Mr. Robinson's just explained in relation to that vote that would be required at council if political balance rules weren't to be applied. That is actually referred to under each relevant committee. So under Article 6 for overview and scrutiny committees, it's on page 59. For regulatory committees, it's on page 63. Under 8.2, under governance and audit committee, it's on page 67 under paragraph 10.2. So where it's relevant for a committee, that same reference is made to the political balance requirements.
Thank you, Graham. Any further comments, Councillor Baxter?
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you for the answers. So what did happen to paragraph 10 of the Constitution? Is it Article 10? I think Article 10. It was there and it's not anymore. I'm just looking at my Constitution to see what it is. It says Constitution Committee. So where is that's become 9, 8. And it's something I can take up with Graham, because I've certainly written down here what happened to number 10. Oh yeah, because in the existing Constitution, Article 9 is the Constitution Committee. Sorry, Article 10 is the Constitution Committee. And now the numbers have all moved on. So something's happened to change the order. And I can't, from looking at it, work out what it is.
You're quite correct, Councillor Baxter. On page 93, it does say the Constitution Committee. So I'm going to pass on now to Graham for an explanation. Graham.
Thanks, Chairman. So actually, I've amalgamated 2 articles into one to make it clearer. So Article 4 in the current Constitution is the Council, and Article 5 is chairing the Council. So I've amalgamated those together to make it clearer for that particular article in relation to the function of full Council.
Thank you. Are you happy with that answer, Councillor Baxter? Have you any further questions?
Yes, I do. There is reference in several of these articles to, we're looking at items 1 and 2 at the moment. I can't remember what the part. So there is reference to part 4, but we haven't got part 4. So I can't comment on whether or not I agree that the particular aspect of the Constitution should be dealt with as under part 4, because we haven't got a part 4. And that's a little bit concerning, but I'm sure we'll come out in the wash.
Thank you, Graham.
Yes, it was. So all of those references will make sense when part 4 is developed and adopted and shared. So it's basically highlighting that there was something in that article that actually is a rule of procedure that needs to be reflected in the rule of procedure rather than the article itself. Otherwise, you're going to be in a position where we are now, where you're trying to, you've got something here that says something should be done a certain way, and then you've got something else somewhere in the document that's either contrary to it or a duplication. So the whole point of this review is to make it clearer to follow. So where there's references like that to procedure rules, that's where we're making it clear in the document that this is the area that we go to in relation to that specific rule of procedure.
Thank you. Councillor Baxter, do you wish to come back?
And this is my last one on this item. So yes, I look forward to that, and I certainly look forward to the constitution being more clear and understandable. My only concern in the process is anything which takes power away from backbenchers and gives it to either the cabinet, the administration, the leader, or the officers. And so that's when I'm reading it, that's what I'm suspicious of. And happily, I haven't seen very much of that. I'll look at part 4 with interest. So thank you, and thank you for bearing with me, Chairman.
Always a pleasure, Councillor Baxter. If I could just comment on that, if I go back once again to 2007, the Constitution, when I joined, was a real hard book to go through. I think you were a councillor then, weren't you, Councillor Dilks? Yes, sir. Yeah, and it was really hard and difficult to go through. So anything that makes our Constitution easy to read, easy to research, and also making sure that we do follow the Constitution will be a good thing. I'm now going to go to recommendations, and the recommendations are that 1, notes progress to date in respect of comprehensive review of the Council's Constitution. 2, provides comments on the content of Part 1 and Part 2 documents, which we've done this morning. 3, agrees that an informal workshop to be held for all members. I propose that we accept those recommendations. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Sandal. All those in favour, please raise your hands. Oh, I do apologise, members. You've been in a hurry. Number 4, subject to there being no significant comments received as part of member workshop, in consultation with the chairman of the Constitution Committee, that the new Part 1 and Part 2 documents be recommended to full council for approval. Again, I propose that we accept those recommendations. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Sandal. All those in favour, please raise their hand. Any against? Councillor Baxter noted. Thank you very much indeed. That is carried forward. We now move on to item 7, which is the format of the Constitution. This is regarding how you or how members of the council would like to see the Constitution in a format, either electronic or hard copy format. But Graham, would you like to explain, please?
Thanks, Chairman. So at the previous meeting of the Constitution Committee, there was a request that we have some discussion at this committee in relation to what format the Constitution will be in for members. So having considered that, I think what we're proposing to recommend is that we move away from kind of by default providing a hard copy for all members. The difficulty with hard copies is that the onus is on the individual member to make sure it's up to date. So when changes do occur, obviously we would send out revisions that can be incorporated into the document, but the onus would be on the individual member to ensure that that's maintained and kept up to date. We will always have the most up-to-date version of the Constitution on our website. So if you needed to refer to the Constitution, then that would be the place to go and review it. But I appreciate some members may wish to have their own hard copy. The other thing that we will do internally in the building is ensure that there are up-to-date hard copies available in the members' room and in political group offices as well. But of course, if any member requested a hard copy of the document, we would provide that for them.
Thank you. So the first Constitution copy I had was a leaflet where you could take out the pages and put fresh pages in, but it was time-consuming, expensive. And my view was that up until the last meeting is that members should have a copy, members of the Constitution Committee should have a copy, and all the rest should have a electronic version which they could access, which I've used, and I found it very comprehensive, very easy to use. But I'm now going to open up to members for their comments. Any comments? Councillor Sandal.
Just to say, being of the old school, a hard copy is much easier to read, but I appreciate this time, the expense of printing them out, and the way forward is technology. So I think that's the way forward we should lead.
Thank you. Councillor Bellamy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The only thing I was going to say is if we do have hard copies, is there going to be a system put in place to make sure that we do know that it's up to date? You know, if it does change, are we going to change a page, or are we going to change the whole section? Because if you change the whole section, I think it would be easier, because then you could have a version number on it. So, and then, you know, have a register of controlled documents sort of thing, so that the register of controlled documents would tell you which version was the most up-to-date one.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea, Councillor Bellamy, because previously we used to change just the page and you didn't know whether you got the refresh page or not. It was the correct page, and so that's a good idea. Councillor Baxter, you wanted to come in?
Yeah, I was going to make the same point. I think that I don't understand why. I understand the issue of cost, but issuing an entire new constitution printed out each time we change a paragraph or cross an I or dot a T, that makes no sense at all. The loose, do you call it a loose leaf or a ring binder version where you've got a clear, so if I've got a copy of the Constitution and Councillor Bellamy's got a copy of the Constitution and we're arguing over it, that we can look at the bottom of the page and see that mine was updated in 2017 and his was updated in 2019, that would solve it. So yeah, I do like having a copy of a physical Constitution, not because I want to cart it around with me all day, but because when I look at the Constitution on the website as it is at the moment, I can't search the whole Constitution. So if I want to search the Constitution for references to political balance, I can't do that because it's in 15 separate documents. And sometimes, as we have discovered to our cost, when we're re-electing a chair of governance and audit or constitution committee or whatever, there are some bits are contained within Article 4 and some within Article 9, and you can't look at them online together at the same time. And I know that we're updating it and it's going to be a lot more clear and everything else, but at the moment it's not online as a single document.
Thank you. I'm going to bring in Alan Robinson now for some clarification. Alan?
Okay, so at the very least, what we're doing is reducing the number of documents, aren't we? So changing it into 4 or 5 parts, so number of parts rather than the lots of articles that we've got now. But your point is exactly what Graham has been saying about having that, you know, changing the way we do this will mean there'll be one version of the truth. At the moment, there's on some occasions there are 2 versions of truth within the same document, and that obviously causes confusion, different interpretation depending on which page you're looking at. And that's honest. I mean, to be fair, you've actually landed on why we're doing this. That's why we're doing it, because we want that to be right. You know, and that shouldn't be the position, but it, unfortunately, because it's in 2 places, that's what's happened, and we need to get that consistency, because otherwise it's not worth the paper it's written on or the electronic bits that it fills up on our servers.
Thank you very much, Alan. Did you wish to come in again, Graham? No. I mean, my own personal view is that we should have an electronic copy, but members of the Constitution Committee should have a hard copy. Councillor Dilks, you wish to speak again, Councillor Dilks?
Oh, you're very kind. Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, accept what Mr. Robinson is saying. And I've said it before in this, not being a member, I don't think every member needs a hard copy, perhaps. I think we can perhaps agree on that. But a hard copy should be available to every member. And, you know, there should be at least one in each of the group offices available and one in the sort of members' tea room. And those hard copies don't have to be A4. They can actually be printed A5, I would suggest. You're going to say that's a problem. Okay, that may be a problem, but I just thought that would save. Previously, as you alluded to, you know, I think my first constitution that I was presented with was an A4 folder, and at least you weren't having to carry around, you know, double the weight of it, you know. But I do take what Councillor Baxter says, and this is part of the process, I know, and I do pay tribute to all the work that's going on to get it right It is a long process to get it right, but and improve it, because I don't want to comment on the state of the constitution now, but it clearly needs this work. But it's very difficult for a member to find the rule that somebody else might get up and say, this rule or that rule, according to the constitution. It is quite actually difficult to find where that rule is in the book of words. And I don't know if there's a way of sort of almost indexing that. I know I'm asking for something more, but can you see what I'm saying? It's very difficult to find it, to actually negotiate the constitution currently, because as Councillor Baxter says, right to speak, for example, of a member, where do you find that? And it's not obvious where that is. You find yourself going through several of the chapters to say, oh, is it in here? No, it's not in there. Oh, is it in this one then? No, it's not in that one either. Oh, it's this third one. I found it. You know what I'm saying? Now, I don't know how we can make that easier for members, but if we can, we should. Thank you.
No, I do agree with you, Councillor Dilks. I remember when I first picked up the Constitution, and I thought, what the hell am I looking at here? Because you just didn't know where to go. So some sort of clarification would be good. I'm going to now bring in Councillor Kellam Cook first to speak. Councillor Cook.
Thank you, Chairman. And I think it was just on one of the points that was raised, is that obviously if any member wishes to have a paper copy, of course, we're going to provide them with that. We're not going to say no. I wouldn't suggest we go back to what we used to have, which was the little folders. It did used to be useful for some members, but I think I'd probably in a diplomatic way say some members were better at updating the folders than others. So we used to get into quite a bit of confusion. I'd agree with Councillor Dilks in terms of, so when we're having full council back in here, I think it'd be useful to have a couple of copies available for members should they require it during the meeting. Likewise, also having it in the members' room and opposition offices as well. The only other thing I would say is obviously with our devices, and I get the point where Councillor Baxter is coming from in terms of the constitution, and I know this is an area where I know Mr. Watts and I discuss is about members training in terms of ModGov. We all have a modern.gov app, and on that it does contain the full constitution that you can go and scroll on and do everything else you want to use, which as we have declared a climate emergency, we should be using less paper. And obviously we just need to use the technology that is available to us. And I know I've advocated we need further training on modern.gov because it is a superb system, and I know I use it on my iPad and stuff.
Thank you very much, Steve. I've got a request from former Chairman Mark Whittington to speak. Are we happy that he speaks? I'm happy with it. Yeah, good. Councillor Whittington.
Yes, thank you very much indeed, Mr. Chairman. Thanks, members of the committee, for allowing me to speak. I was actually going to raise potentially, in terms of if we do have a hard copy of the Constitution, it'd be entirely possible to have copies online of each individual part, plus a version of the whole Constitution together as one document, which has then got a search facility. So if Councillor Baxter, or Councillor Dilks are looking for, or any member of the committee is looking for specific terms like political balance or right of reply on a searchable document of the whole Constitution, to then focus in and to look at that. And my second point was really, I think the point that Councillor Cook has just made. Obviously, as a council, we have to, as part of climate change, and I've got a portfolio now, we should be looking to reduce the level of paper that we actually generate as a council. And here's me with a paper copy of today's meeting papers, which is probably shouldn't be doing. But I think maybe, and I think Councillor Cook made the point, that maybe we do need a lot more training on things like modern.gov and that sort of stuff. Have faith and confidence in the technology so we can all move to maybe try to move as far as we can towards being totally paperless. I can remember watching a episode of Tomorrow's World, 1976, 77. I think it was William Woolard said, by 1990, we were living in totally paperless offices. Well, I think we sort of got quite a bit to actually do on that. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed. I'm going to now ask Graham Watts to conclude. Thank you.
I was just going to mention, in terms of Councillor Dilks' comments about the difficulty in finding where things are, and that's the whole point. That's the whole remit for me, really, in relation to this review, is to make it easy to use. So yeah, no, appreciate the comments that are made, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you very much. There's no need. Councillor Bellamy.
I'd just like to make a comment about what the previous chairman said about one thing that would be helpful in the future. I'm not saying now, but when our tablets are due to be replaced for whatever reason, that we do have a proper look at what's a little bit more user-friendly than what we've got now. Especially if we are going to go paperless, we need to have something that's that doesn't give you a raging headache after about a couple of hours. So.
Or the battery runs out. Yes, Councillor Cook.
Thank you. Just one final bit on the constitution bit was I think we're quite lucky here with the length of our constitution, because I actually had a look at the county council's constitution the other day, and that stretches to, I think it's about 600 pages. So I'm not going to advocate being on that working group. In terms of devices for members, I absolutely appreciate the concerns and issues that some members have had with their devices this term. I think it's always a case of, it's not one device that fits all. So for me, I know there's discussions with our IT team at the moment, and it's certainly be done around what the individual requires, whether that be whether they prefer a laptop or an Apple iPad or a Windows tablet. It really should be up to the user to choose what works best for them, because it's not a one-size-fits-all approach.
Thank you very much indeed. There's no need to vote on this, members, so all your views have been captured by Graham. So we're now going to move on to item 8, extra meeting dates. Now, these are required because obviously we now deferred an item from this meeting to another meeting. Are we happy to have further meetings either later this month or April, a date to be set to hold workshops on future constitution changes? Councillor Baxter.
Thank you, Chairman. Obviously, if we need to have extra meetings, then we need to have extra meetings, and whether they're informal or formal, I don't mind. Despite what we've said earlier on about the Kratos report working groups, I do appreciate it when even the informal meetings are in the public domain. I think it's how the law works, and I think unless there are specific issues which are contravening the rules of confidentiality, when we meet formally and informally, it should be in the public domain, and people should be able to see what we're up to. Not that I can't imagine there are many people in South Kesteven that want to listen to us debating over whether it's paragraph 3.4 or 3.5, but in principle, we should be accountable, and we should be seen to be accountable for what we're saying and doing. Having said that, it's not just the constitutional changes that this committee needs to think about extra dates. Back in January 2001, I think, I requested that we have a review of the scrutiny process, and the leader generously agreed that we should have a review. And we had some fellow Conservative councillor from elsewhere come in to give a report, which he delivered, I think, in August last year. And that's never made it into the public domain, and we still haven't done anything with it. So I wonder what's happening with that one, and whether or not we need an extra meeting to discuss the review of the scrutiny process.
I don't see that as part of the Constitution Committee. There has been a scrutiny review of this authority, and also recommendations, I understand, will be put to the council at a future date. So the process is ongoing. Can I bring in Councillor Alan Robinson?
Oh, thank you.
I'll get my councillors right this time.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll try not to be. I've got a politically restricted post. I'm not a councillor. So you're absolutely right. There's work going on in terms of the outcome of the scrutiny review and dealing with the recommendations made. Some of those will go straight to council because the things that aren't constitutional. Well, those ones that are constitutional will need to come in the way we're working, the transparent way that we're trying to work and be as inclusive as we can. They will come to this committee on their way to full council, but they need to be agreed at full council, because changes, as we discussed earlier, in scrutiny or any other part of the committee system, need to be agreed by full council. So they'll need to go there, and the best way for them to go there is with your recommendation as a committee. So that's what I would be expecting to happen. That's the work that we're looking to do over the coming weeks. So just bear with us. We'll try and get
Thank you.
Timing wise, obviously that may be challenging for annual council when the rest of the constitution is done, because we've been focusing on this. But that by no means doesn't mean that we won't do everything we can to get those all done together.
Thank you. Just want to reassure members, what I said earlier on, that all meetings, workshops will be held in public unless there's a confidential item within that meeting. And I know that Councillor Mark Whitson, when he was chairman, did do that. So it's something that we will do now and forever. Thank you. Did you want to come back, Councillor Baxter?
Yes, I did. It seems that you seem to think that the scrutiny review wouldn't come here, but Mr. Robinson thinks that it will. I mean, I think that it should, and certainly the previous chair of this committee also thought that it would, if I'm not mistaken. So, but my point is, I don't. If it goes to a different committee, I don't mind taking it to whichever committee you like, as long as it's discussed in public. I can't see how the review of the scrutiny process would go to any other committee than the Constitution Committee. But also, we requested it in January. It arrived at the council in August. We discussed it in private between members, I think in October or November, and then since then it's got lost in the long grass. And we have all kinds of these reports, and they often get. I know there's process and everything else, but at the moment, when Mr. Robinson talks about the work going on, I haven't seen any work going on with it. I'm sure work does go on, and I understand that Mr. Watts and Mr. Robinson have got a lot on their plate. But currently, I don't know where that document has got to, nor when I get a chance to address it, nor when it might get here or a workshop or full council or anything else. And as I've said before, personally, I'm underwhelmed by the impact of scrutiny, and certainly there were items within that scrutiny report, and I'm not giving away any confidentiality, that there were changes which would be useful, but we appear to be sitting on them at the moment rather than getting on with making the council a better, more functional institution. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Steve. Councillor Baxter, rest assured I have been inquiring as to the progress of the scrutiny review, and if it is due to come here, it will come here, rest assured. Thank you. Any further questions? Councillor Dilks.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. It's just on extra meeting dates, and forgive me, but I note that within this room that the majority of us are double hatters, and there is this point that affects you and I regularly, and we have a clash of one particular meeting with council meetings here, and it is whenever extra meeting dates are added, I would ask respectfully that we do coordinate with the county and other bodies. For example, the police panel. I was not able to come to that meeting of the planning committee to discuss the Kratos report because I was at a police panel that day. It just happened to clash, and we're not always going to achieve that, I appreciate, but I just don't think, and I get the impression that there's not enough coordination between the bodies in coordinating diaries. Yeah, that's all I'd say. Thank you.
Yeah, you're quite right, Councillor Dilks. The Overview and Scrutiny Committee at County Council often clashes with this, but if the full council had voted just to move that back by 1 hour, it would have helped. Yes, but Councillor Cook.
I think just to allay members' fears on that one, we do contact and work with all of our partners in trying to make sure that we don't have clashes in diaries. I know at the moment we're currently looking at the provisional dates for next year. We're already in discussions with the county council and all the other bodies to try and make sure that we don't have clashes, because I appreciate also on a personal basis now, wearing different hats and attending different meetings at different organisations, that we all want to do the best role we can in attending and representing our areas.
Thank you. That's good to hear, because like Councillor Dilks, we leave home at 8:30 in the morning, and often they get a chance to eat until later on in the day. So, and also you've got the health and safety side of that as well. Any further comments from members? No. So I'll be happy to vote on having a future deferred meeting and also extra workshops to progress this constitution to its final conclusion. I propose that we do. Do you have a seconder? Second, all those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you very much indeed. I don't have any further business, so that at 11:45, did you have a further point to raise, Councillor Bellamy, before I close the meeting?
Just that I apologise for raising the planning review issue late, Mr. Chairman, but I didn't get a chance to look at the agenda till yesterday afternoon due to family commitments.
No, you did the right thing, Councillor Bellamy, and thank you for raising it with me. It's correct that we have a clear and transparent process in this council and we follow it. Thank you. So at 11:48, I therefore close this meeting. Thank you for attending today. Thank you.